Welcome to episode 306 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing screenwriter Jamie Grefe. He's got a number of produced screenplays as well as a few projects in development. He's another great example of a real hustler. He's just a guy out there making things happen for himself. All his success that he's had has been without an agent or manager. It's just him hustling and doing the work. We dig into his various projects to find out how he got the scripts that he's sold, how he got them sold, and how he got them produced. He's very candid about all of this, and we go into great detail about a lot of his projects. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 306. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. Quick few words about what I'm working on. I'm still slowly putting together the horror thriller mystery project I've been talking about over the last couple of months. Yesterday we did some more casting. We're trying to figure out we're trying to figure out when we're going to shoot the film. I've got I pretty much got to figure that out today. Our debate is whether to shoot before the Kickstarter or after. There's a number of issues that are kind of restrictive on the schedule, but if we don't shoot in December, it means that we'll have to wait until March, April-ish. So at least for the next few days, I'm going to just really go through the budget and the production notes, everything, try and get things lined up and really just see if reasonably we can get everything together by December. It would be nice, obviously, to get the film shot and in the can, and then we would do the Kickstarter afterwards to raise money for post-production and the marketing of the film. So that's the debate right now. I think we're close to having our 3 leads cast, so I should have an announcement about that hopefully soon. So that's kind of where I'm at with that project, and just as time is going on, it's obviously consuming more and more of my time. Just setting up a casting session and getting all the actors, getting the location, is fairly time consuming. So this is definitely what I'm going to be here, whether we shoot in December or March, April, I'd say for the next 4 months. Really after that, because then we'll have post-production. But the post-production is not quite as frantic once you get into that. If you get busy with something else, you can put it on hold for a week or a day or whatever you need to. So it's a little bit just of a different production. Is a lot of moving parts, and it all kind of has to come together at the same time. So anyway, stay tuned for that. I'll certainly hopefully have some updates here as that project goes along. So that's the main thing I've been working on the last few weeks. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing screenwriter Jamie Grefe. Here is the interview. Welcome, Jamie, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Oh, man, I grew up in northeastern Lower Michigan, and I grew up in a small but very artistically thriving town. And so even at a young age, in middle school, and it's funny you ask, I was writing screenplays in these kind of composition books, and a friend of mine passed this on to me about 10 years ago. But grew up in a small town writing kind of, stories and narratives. And then in high school, even using kind of VHS cameras to capture narrative, moving on to college in Western Michigan and not studying film, but at the same time doing film on the side, kind of pre-YouTube days with a kind of collective of friends, making these short 10, 15, 20-minute narratives just for fun, to be honest with you, never thinking that it could evolve into a career and actually not even writing at that point. But, the seeds were planted, I think, very early on, whether that's from the influence of satellite television in the house, HBO, Cinemax, at a very young age, to, like I said, this kind of thriving town, rich musical background, and lots of really creative people influencing these artistic decisions.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fascinating because I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and I didn't feel any of that. I didn't feel like there was any real artistic community, at least not one that my parents or me were actually involved in. And I wonder, do you think that gave you some inspiration? Were there some role models in that? Some people that were actually making a living from their artistic endeavors? Because I think that's what was missing for me.
Yeah, well, we had a really active musical community, and it was such that we were welcomed in. It was a community where it was like, hey, we're not just going to play music, and we're not just going to have house parties. We're going to rent out spaces and organize shows, and we're going to bring the community. We're going to make posters for this, that kind of DIY, punk, grunge, metal. It didn't even matter the genre, but these were high school kids and young people who were just making things happen. I think that sense of like starting a project and then having a goal, giving high school kids this sense that they could actually organize events and see them through, that counted towards a lot. And like I said, even in high school, there was the idea that I could get a VHS camera, and I wasn't the only one doing this. There were others around me. Hey, we can get a VHS camera, cut together a movie, and this would be like, 12, 13, 14, 15 years of age, and we could have a VHS product that we could then take to our friends and show it off. This kind of spirit of doing it and just kind of doing what needs to be done was, I think, a real richness in the childhood experience.
Yeah, yeah. So then, okay, so you're going through that, through high school, through college, making some of these shorts. What was that moment where you thought, okay, I'm going to try and turn this into a career. I'm going to actually try and sell some screenplays. Maybe take us through that transition a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, so I got my bachelor's degree, and right away after getting the bachelor's degree, I left the U.S., and I was actually out of the U.S. for 10 years, and I was doing teaching and translating, and I even did a stint in television. So I'll slow down a little bit. I went to South Korea for 1 year, studied Japanese as an undergraduate, kept studying Japanese in South Korea, and then I made the move to Japan, where I just really immersed myself, teaching by day, making these kinds of strange noise compositions, improvised music, doing this kind of soundtrack kind of work, but no film, but simply just experimental music, going really deep into that for a long time. Started working in television over there because my Japanese at that point got so good that I was able to find a kind of a PA, production assistant level job in the Japanese TV world. Was not prepared for the 60 plus, 70 plus hours of work that was demanded of me at that time, speaking in a foreign language. But I did it, and I made a lot of great friends. Did it for about a year, got married, stick with me, moved to China, taught English in China, and I was starting to teach, I was teaching real English. I was teaching diplomats' kids and kids who had come from all over the world to this international school, teaching Shakespeare. For the first time in my life, I was really reading Shakespeare. And this would put me at about age 30, and I'm 40 now. Teaching Shakespeare, teaching J.G. Ballard, poetry, and so on and so forth. And they had this workshop, and this teacher, I believe her name is Susan Danoff, and she's based in the U.S., and I think she still does workshops around the country for educators, but she came to the school and she said, I want to do a creative writing exercise with all the teachers. And it was essentially a visualization exercise where she had us all shut our eyes and she told us this tale, and she really eased us into it, almost hypnotized all of us into this really relaxed state. And then she said, now I want you to imagine yourself in that story, and I want you to write what you see, what you feel, what you hear, And so it was really a creative writing exercise. And I had done these kinds of similar exercises with the kids in the classroom, but this took it this went really personal, or this went to a different place within me as an adult. So I wrote that page, and then I shared it, and everybody was quiet. And I was like, oh no, did I share too much, essentially? Did I just open up something? And all my colleagues were like, oh my God, the English teacher's kind of nuts. But no, lo and behold, people came up to me and said, you know what, that was really good. Have you considered writing? Have you thought about writing? And I thought, well, yeah, I've dabbled in it throughout the years. But there was just kind of this push inside me. And like I said, I was making that music in Japan. And I did that for years. And that kind of hit a stopping point. And I did my last show in Beijing, China. And I think it's even up on my YouTube page. I put the show on there. And I kind of, at that day, I thought, this is the last show I'm doing. Now I'm going to write. Because writers only need a notebook or a laptop. But a musician, you need a lot more than that. And it's a lot of setup and it's a lot of takedown. And I was just tired, you know. So I started writing, and I wrote and I wrote, and I just almost got it all out of me that following weekend. And I think I wrote like a 27,000 word document, a story. Not good, but at least I did it. Mm-hmm. From there, I just started working that angle of how can I learn to be a better writer, you know? Now, this is not screenwriting. Mm-hmm. The first screenwriting opportunity that came was in 2013. Now, I'll tell you, from 2010 to 13, I actually got a lot of publications because there's a very rich, much like screenwriters, we query directors or producers, mm-hmm. production companies. Well, authors query publishing houses or online journals or print journals, you know. So I had a lot of experience in being rejected. And then I knew also, mm-hmm. I got rejected 40 plus times for one story. Then finally that story hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the formula. Get rejected. You know, I'm doing something right. I got rejected. So I learned that. And then I took that with me. And then in 2013, my wife and I relocated back to America, to Michigan, had one child at the time. And I was on Facebook. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to a filmmaker that I really like. Found him, added him as a friend. It was very much just a whim, actually. And his name is Jim Wynorski, and he's a bit of a B-movie legend. He came up under Roger Corman. He did this movie called Chopping Mall, which is kind of a cult classic. He's done a lot of movies, maybe 100 plus movies. Huh. Anyway, he was on Facebook. I reached out to him. I said, Jim, can I novelize one of your movies? I'm a writer. And I even had this book came out, The Mondo Vixen Massacre, was published a few months before that. This was actually written in China and then got published right when we moved to America. And I said, you know, Jim, I said, here's a PDF. This is what I've done. I said, could I novelize one of your movies? Because I think I'm the guy that could do that, you know. He said, well, okay, you know, write 5 pages or whatever, and here's the movie you could novelize. And he gave me one of his titles. So I did for about a week. I just worked at it. And then I must have replied to him at the right time, because the day I replied to him, I said, here's 5 pages. Here's what I've been working on. He said, hold on. He said, Jamie, this is a screenplay. This feels like a screenplay. He said, do you have final draft? I said, no. He said, you need to buy it tonight. He said, I have a job for you. I was like, wait, what do you mean? Writing a movie. What do you got? He's like, well, I got these really goofy, sexy comedies for TV. And he said, I got a few of them. Interested? I'm an open-minded guy. I said, yeah, sure, I'm interested. You know, what do I have to lose? Yeah. You know, I'm like, absolutely. And it's like your idol kind of like comes to you and says, I have something for you. You don't turn it down. You know, it's like one of those like crossing the bridge kind of moments. So I learned really quickly. I bought Final Draft. And you know what? Actually, I was reading the manual. I was like, what is Final Draft? How do I operate this program? Within a couple days, I was like, this is a fantastic program. Screenwriting, you know, it went back to like that childhood kind of like, well, I've done this before in some capacity. And the beautiful thing is, Jim said, here's an example of a script that's a similar genre, same genre. And he said, here's a 2-page outline. Boom, 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 boom. This is what I want you to write. So right away, the first writing assignment, he gives me the template, but he was still very cautious. He said, give me 15 pages, then let's talk on the phone. We'll see how it is. The other cool thing is he said these scripts are only 45 pages long because half of them are simulated lovemaking. The other half is narrative. All right? Uh-huh. Okay. Hey, it's true. It is simulated lovemaking.
I got you.
All right.
Just out of curiosity, what was the script that he gave you as an example? What was the example script?
The example was Double D Dude Ranch. Horrible title. But he pitched it to me as a sexy spaghetti Western. So, you know, again, I'm interested. You've intrigued me. So he gave me the Double D Dude Ranch. Obviously, there's emphasis on a certain body part. Okay, there are certain beats that need to be hit, but he provided the template, and I wrote it and I fleshed it out. I put meat on that skeleton. Gave him the 15 pages. He said, "This is good. Go ahead and finish the thing." Okay, I finished it. Literally, Ashley, there were no notes. How rare is that? Super rare. This is not me bragging, but this is me going, what a weird thing. Great. Then he said, "I have another. Would you like to?" I said, I have the funds to make another. Could you pitch some things my way? I did. We took one and ran with it. It became the Nurses movie. Originally, it was called Savage Nurses. Now, Double D actually sold to Showtime, and so that's a later thing. But actually, that did go to Showtime, and it went in households of age all around the world. Sexy Nurses, as it came to be called, went on a couple streaming platforms, but not as big. But then a really cool thing happened where he said, "I have another," and he said, "I want it to be a shark movie, but I don't have a shark, but it's already in place. Here's I have financing for it. You have 24 hours. Come back at me with an idea." And I did. So it was just, I guess just to boil it down, actually, it was a really kind of punch in the face. It was that's the wrong way to put it. It was just this great rush of energy. Here are several projects. Let's go back and forth. Bam, 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 bam. And at the end of the day, I wrote 4 of those for him, and 3 of them got distribution. The other I've never seen. I know he shot it. It's like this mystery movie that he holds, and he won't show to me for some reason. He just won't give it to me. Mm-hmm. He's busy. But anyway, 4 of those. And that kind of started things. But it started things in a really weird way. But there is no normal way into screenwriting. Am I right?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
You know that from interviewing hundreds of people. But this was my side door into one room of what we call screenwriting.
I got you. Okay, so then what was that next step? On IMDb, you have a number of other credits, The Wishing Forest. Maybe let's start with that one. You've done these 3 movies for this guy, Jim. And then what was the next step to try and maybe work in a different genre, propel yourself forward?
Absolutely. Actually,
let me stop you there, because I had one follow-up question. So this relationship that you have with Jim, because I know I've heard of people that have had success with social media. It sounds like you just found him on Facebook. How long did it take before you got to the point where you were saying, could I novelize this thing? Was it pretty quick? Did you have some messages back and forth? Hey, I'm a big fan of your work, blah, blah, blah. Just maybe go through that a little bit, because I feel like a lot of people, they think that you're just going to friend someone on Twitter. Hey, man, can you read my script? And it's generally not quite that. That's not quite how it goes.
Yeah, it's such a case by case thing, and it's so weird, Ashley. I mean, I use social media. We all use social media, and we use it for these purposes as well. In the case of Jim, it was very much like student to teacher relationship. I approached him very professionally. Friending somebody on Facebook. Okay, fine, it is what it is. Then I sent him a message. Hi, Jim. This is my name. This is who I am. Being very open and transparent about what I wanted to get out of that relationship. Literally, it was a query. It was based on my publishing experience and how I queried journals, maybe to get them to read a story of mine. I simply did the same thing with him. I didn't start as a friend, or I didn't build that relationship as a friend, Mm-hmm. And I've done that with other people. I've actually had directors and have directors and producer friends of mine who I will email them and they will email me, and we'll just literally have a back and forth, maybe for a long time. And maybe when something is right, a project will blossom out of it. But other times you can literally go right to the gate and say, look, I like your work. I would like to work with you. And here's what I bring to the table. Mm-hmm. That's just one way.
And this was through the Facebook messaging system? Like you didn't have his email or anything like that? Just through Facebook you sent him a message, which was essentially a query?
That's right.
So,
That's
okay.
correct.
Well, good. That's good to know. Okay, so let's talk about The Wishing Forest then. You've done these 3 movies for Jim, and then now you're moving along. How did you get the Wishing Forest set up?
Well, actually, in between The Wishing Forest, there's a director in Alabama whose work, he made a fake trailer for the Halloween movies. And his name's Jay Burleson. And in 2016, I friended him. And him and I talked. I loved that trailer. You can look it up. I don't remember the name of it, but it's Halloween. It's a trailer. It's a fake trailer. Anyway, him and he had a script, and I wrote that script for him, and we kind of chugged along with that. And that's actually became A House in Your Neighborhood, which is nearly complete right now. But back in 2016, with him working on that, I was living up in New Mexico at the time. Then I moved I got my master's degree in creative writing, had another publishing success, and then moved out to the Los Angeles area. Out here is where I met. I just happened to be, it helps to read the trades. And so when I say the trades, I guess the trades could include anything that's relevant to your purposes of the genres that you like, right? So I like many genres. I like many kinds of things. But say I'm reading a horror news website, and suddenly I see, okay, such and such a director has such and such a project. Here's the trailer. Okay, cool. There was a movie that looked, at that time, given where I was at as a writer, which wasn't setting the bar too high. There was a low-budget director. There was a low-budget director, and who probably prefers to remain nameless at this point. But I reached out to this director, and I said, I like your work. Again, it was like the gym situation. Do you have anything? Here's what I can bring to the table, and I think I could complement your directing style. I think that's kind of the thing I look for when I see a movie. I kind of go, wow, that's a really neat movie. Who is this person? And are they open to what I'm doing? I love that alchemy. I love trying to cultivate that. And I have several of those right now, and I always try to keep those going. But anyway, with this director, he did happen to say, yes, I do have something. So again, it was just kind of getting lucky, And in between that, there's obviously a lot of people who don't pan out for one reason or another. But this guy did. Now, with The Wishing Forest, this director said, hey, I have a very small budget. I have no interiors. I literally only have a big woods. Now, I'm from Michigan, so I'm like, hey, fantastic. I grew up in the woods, He said, I have a big woods, and I have a horse that I can do a unicorn horn, and I have about 5 or 6 actors. Needs to have a unicorn in it. That's what his investors were telling him. Can you give me some ideas? So it started from that sandbox. So we're not in gym territory. We're in more of like, here are some parts to play with.
A kid's movie. It's a family friendly.
Well, kids movie, that's the weird thing about this one. It's an adult oriented fairy tale. Okay. It's But yes, the unicorn part was like really confusing. Like, so you're gonna do a unicorn movie, but you're gonna have like tons of gore. It's a really gory movie actually. But he said it's for the German market. So I was like, okay, understood. So I pitched him a screenplay, an idea. He said, great, go with it. And he said, write it up. And I wrote it up. Now with him, it was really interesting because he's the kind of director where, and I've noticed this as well, which is that every collaboration, obviously they're uniquely different, but there's so much to learn with each collaboration. So, in this part, he even said like, he said, I can't shoot the script this way. And then he would play with it and give it back to me. And he would go, but I can shoot it this way. So, okay, I can see how you can shoot it that way. Then he said, but your writing needs to be cleaned up. Could you give me a scene by scene breakdown? Okay, I've never done that before, but here's a chance for me to do that, So kind of being included in this kind of other way helped me gain experience as well. But he ended up shooting it, selling it, and I think it's available in Germany, Switzerland, and I want to say Austria. And I know it is. I know it is up for dibs on thefilmcatalog.com. I believe ITN Films is trying to distribute it in the North American market, but I don't know if that happened yet or not.
Yeah. And that's fascinating that a unicorn movie is specific to that sort of, Western European market.
Absolutely.
Was there anything to that? Are unicorns more well regarded in Germany than they are here? Like, what was the sort of the logic behind it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was kept in the dark. And I don't know, but I assume based on what you just said that it was an attempt to market that to a specific niche of people. Again, based off of the company that gave him the funds, right? I mean, there's always this power in how to say this. As a screenwriter, we obviously can bring our creative talents to the table. And when I write spec scripts, which I have a collection of spec scripts, I craft them in the way I want to craft them, and I put in what I want to put in them, and they're truly mine. But in every collaboration, there's always these parameters, and there are always these expectations, and then there's the challenge, and it can be a really good challenge, or it can be a really frustrating challenge, or it can be both, of taking notes and implementing notes and shaping a narrative to how the director or investors, buyers want it, right? So with the unicorn thing, it literally was like, hey, screenwriter, you're a hired gun. Do you want the project? Yes. Okay, there's going to be a unicorn. Okay. There's no interiors. Okay. Here's the deadline. Fine. It was very sterile, and it was very satisfying. The movie turned out pretty good. The trailer is actually out there as well.
Okay, gotcha. So what about, let's go back to A House in Your Neighborhood. How did you meet the filmmaker in Alabama? How did you guys interact?
Well, so I'm a family man. I have children. It's hard to get out of the house. I work, schedules are tight. So with Jay, again, it's this method of using social media. And maybe if that's one theme that's running throughout our talk right now, it's the value that anyone with an internet connection can literally, with the right intention and the proper use of your communicative force, you can create relationships to other creators. So Jay is and has become a good friend of mine, but I literally reached out to him and said, hey man, it looks like you're a young filmmaker down in Alabama. You did this Halloween trailer. It's awesome, man. I want to tell you that it's awesome. And if you have anything you think you need somebody to write or you want help with, let me know. I always see the writer as, in myself, as being that kind of a force, and you've talked about this before, I believe, in your other podcasts, and you know this from your own experience, that sometimes there are producers, not sometimes, there are producers out there who are too busy to write what they want to write. So if they can find you, and if they can trust that what you are giving them is of the quality that their buyers expect, and if you can be a really good communicator with them, there can be a collaboration there. Yeah. So with Jay, it was mutual interest followed by what are you working on? And he happened to be nursing this idea of a haunted house script. I had not done a haunted house script. I was in the middle of getting my master's degree. And I thought, and that was more focused on fiction. And I thought, hey, man, if you want me to take a stab at this, because that's another skill. I think as a screenwriter, it does also help to analyze, your strengths and your weaknesses and be very honest with yourself. Like, where are you coming from? What can you really bring to the table? And I know one thing I can bring to the table is speed. That is one thing I can bring to the table. I can I can sit down and I can write, and I can sustain myself in that chair writing. And I can crank out pages, and they're not necessarily bad. I know some people that, I hit 5 pages a day. Some people 30 pages, 20, whatever. Everybody's different. And I've realized about myself is that I can set, maybe it's not even just being sustained, but it's also being disciplined. I can tell myself, all right, from 8 to 10 p.m., I'm going to write. Then I'm going to wake up at 4, and I'm going to write from 4 to 6. I'm going to go to work. I have 2 breaks at work. I have a lunch break at work. I'm going to write for those lunch breaks. I'm going to hit 50 pages today. That's ideal. I'm just being vague.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, that mindset can really change a lot. So with Jay, I said, hey, you have a screenplay. Maybe you don't have time to write it. Why don't you let me take a stab at it? I'll do it for free. That's another thing, actually. If you're offering to write something for free, sometimes you're going to find that doors do open for you,
Yeah. So fantastic. So let's talk about It Hungers. How did that movie come about?
So It Hungers was a follow-up with the same group of people that were involved with the Wishing Forest. And literally it was just this, hey, here's what I have. I don't know how to finish it. And these are the kinds of relationships I like to see because I can help you finish it. Let me see it. Let's write it out. Let's do an outline. And I think as a screenwriter, that's one thing we can always work to improve upon is our storytelling skill, And I'm always learning. I think I emailed you a while ago about, hey, have you ever seen Dan Harmon's Story Circles? I've bought books from people that you've interviewed on your show, just always good to be, upping those competencies. So with It Hungers, the guy had a story, the guy had an outline, but again, just couldn't quite pull it together. And to be honest, some people, writing is not their strong point. A director doesn't have to be a great writer. They might be fantastic behind a camera or giving instructions. Maybe writing isn't their strong suit. So I came in, right person, right place, right time, right budget. I made it happen. And then that movie it took a while, but it came to fruition. And now I believe it has distribution forthcoming later this month in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and again, with hopeful US release, Sure. And I'm always kind of out of those loops at this point. So I don't know. I sometimes I just hear via hearsay as well.
Yeah. So what about Collide and Bluebird? Those are two projects that are listed as in development. What's the status with those?
Absolutely. Collide's been a beautiful project to work with. The director of that, who's attached, Johnny Martin, is a very experienced stuntman, director, producer, very, very experienced. And I had the good fortune of approaching him at the right place in the right time and asking him, what are you looking for? And again, this kind of ties back to that idea of when that door does open for you, when somebody does get back to you, if you query somebody and they say, well, I'm looking for, a Christmas comedy. And if you happen to have a Christmas comedy, or you have that idea that you've been kicking around and you tell yourself, I can write that Christmas comedy, you do write it, take advantage of those moments, right? Those are the moments that I think we wait for. And with Johnny, I had just been coming off of another collaboration that didn't seem to be happening, but a lot of work was put into it. And then I reached out to Johnny. He got back to me and said, hey, here's what I'm looking for. And it hit me. And I said to myself, I'm going to write this script for him. And I'm going to nail it, for whatever that meant to me. It's an action. It's going to have suspense. It's going to have just this great tension. He's a car guy, so I'm just going to make this just such a powerful car-driven suspense script. And it was one of those stories where I did give him something good enough to the point where he said, let's talk. I have changes, but let's talk. And so that relationship's actually been ongoing. And Hannibal Media acquired the rights to that script earlier in the year, and I believe they're still standing behind there. Well, they're standing behind it as a production company, and there's some things working with it, man. It's really great.
And how did you meet Johnny? Was that also social media?
Absolutely.
It was.
Absolutely. I don't go out, Ashley. I don't go out, man. I've got kids. I'm time is just a commodity. Mm-hmm. And so again, that's what I want to teach these younger screenwriters who might be in college, or somebody who might be just not in college, but just somebody who's a screenwriter going, how do I break in? How do I get in? There's no one way in. There's many ways in. Mm-hmm. Who are you? What can you bring to the table? And can you meet who you need to meet? I've been lucky, but I've also been rejected a lot too. A lot of things just don't go anywhere. Sometimes you nurse a lot of projects and then they ebb and they flow.
Yeah.
So Johnny.
And let's talk about that for just a second, because a lot of this work, and this is just the nature of screenwriting, and we've all been through it, but how do you deal with those projects where you put an enormous amount of time on it and then it basically just dies? Those are heartbreaking, gut-wrenching moments. And how do you keep going? How do you get over those speed bumps? And I don't think anybody fully understands that until they've actually worked as a professional screenwriter, actually gotten into the trenches and actually started doing that. I think people that come to this, they think it's going to be, I'm just going to write my spec script and send it in, and there's going to be these things. But those are just absolutely heartbreaking moments when you feel like your best work is basically being flushed down the toilet. How do you get through those, and how do you deal with that, and just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and then continue to trot on?
Yeah. It's fantastic, and it for me, it all depends obviously on the project and how much I've invested into it. And it always, I don't want to say it always hurts. Sometimes it hurts more than other times, depending on what's riding on it. But what I've found personally for me is a couple things. One is, first of all, how am I interpreting rejection? That's a big thing. There's obviously this common idea of rejection, of this project failed, it died. What does that mean to me? So if I work on a project for a year and it keeps dying, and it seems like it's going to die, and it seems like it's just going to fade away, am I able to take a step back from that and ask myself, what did I get out of this? Did I get anything out of this? How has this made me a better screenwriter? And what do I control in this process? Because sometimes you work on a project and you pass it off to the director, and then it kind of goes into their court, or the producer. And then it's up to them. How do they try to pitch it out? How do they take it out to market? Maybe they're not savvy at getting the right person for the script. Maybe it is a script problem. Maybe it does need to come back to you. But I think that still holds. How do you interpret failure? There's a great philosopher whose work I like, E.M. Choran. He said, an existence transfigured by failure. So the idea of failure being something that you not only can learn from, but something that can enhance your life in a way, is a really counterintuitive way to contemplate rejection. So does it hurt? It can. But can you learn something from it that allows you to move on and do what needs to be done for the next project? Another thing that helps is having a very fertile imagination. So instead of having one project that you nurse for 5 years, why not have a notebook full of projects that you feel you could pull off? Maybe set up goals for yourself. Get yourself an ink tip account. Start figuring out, what are people looking for? They do weekly newsletters, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the market looking for? Start to get into that mindset. Don't get caught in the idea of, my script's not going anywhere, I'm not good enough. Well, maybe you're not good enough, but good enough for what? So set yourself, take an honest look at yourself, where you want to be, what kind of scripts you want to write. Move towards that. Can you get access to those scripts? I mean, there's always stuff to learn. Mm-hmm. So interpretation of failure and interpretation of rejection, to me, counts for so much, man. I'm a firm believer that as a person thinks, your thinking influences how you're going to react to things, how you're going to interpret and move forward on projects. Dude, I've had projects, yes, full year, 6 rewrites, 7 rewrites, page 1 rewrites. The director's agent gets it. Agent goes, I don't know how to sell this. Then you just kind of look and you're just like hanging off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
But then maybe the director comes to you and says, don't worry, I've got our second project. Do you want to start on it? Then what do you do at that moment? Mm-hmm. So I think you have to look at yourself in the eye and go, do I still want to write? What is screenwriting to me? Does it mean that I write without getting paid? Those are learning moments, man, right? Like, what do I do? How much do I really feel I'm a screenwriter? Mm-hmm. So the process goes on and on and on and on. I mean, Collide might not come to life. I certainly hope it does. Bluebird might not come to life. I certainly hope it does. But we all know there are chances that these things won't come to life.
Yeah. So let's talk about balance with family life. You and I are in a similar situation. We both have children that, obviously that requires a lot of time. And so maybe talk about things. I mean, I can tell already that one of the keys to your success is just, straightforward discipline. And that's not necessarily always easy to teach, but maybe give us some pointers on how do you manage your day-to-day? How do you keep up with these projects? I think you're also working a full-time job. Obviously, you told me you have 3 children, young children at that, so they require a lot of time. Maybe talk about that, a little bit of the work balance life that you've tried to work towards.
Yeah, putting things, being able to see your day in terms of what can I do today? So how to say this? Let me put this the right way. When screenwriting becomes necessary, when it becomes not even it's not like, maybe I'll write today, or maybe I'll keep pursuing people. But when it comes down to, I need to do this, then I feel the time does happen. Kids sleep. After the kids sleep, instead of winding down with a nice TV show, I might open up Final Draft, or in my case, I use Fade In, which I feel is a great software. I open up Fade In and go, okay, I'm gonna at least outline this project tonight. Boom, outline the project. Again, sleep, wake up super early in the morning. I feel it's those early morning hours, the late night hours. It's taking advantage of that free time. It's how to do that, and then how to shut it off. Because my kids don't care about what I'm writing. and they shouldn't have to, it doesn't matter to them. I'm not going to tell them. No, they might see me working on something during the day when I have to sketch something in the notebook, and they get curious. What are you working on? Are you writing? Yeah, I'm writing. Writing is great. That's a teachable moment. Maybe they start to do some writing and crafting stories, So kind of weaving that into the day as well. But when it comes time to like paying for the house, paying the bills, having a full-time job, those are very real concerns for people. And you do what you have to do. But in addition to doing what you have to do, you also do what you have to do to be a writer and to sustain that. Not in terms of how much you want it, but what are you actually doing? What are you in control of, and what are you doing? So I'm constantly crafting and recrafting plans. I'm kind of looking at my day, going, well, today I'm probably not going to be able to do X, but you know what? I bet I can do it tomorrow morning, and then sticking to that. So doing what needs to be done when it needs to.
Yeah, sound advice for sure. So another question I had for you, I get a lot of people emailing me, should I move to Los Angeles? Should I not move to Los Angeles? And I think these are actually conversations that you and I had via email some years ago. What was it for you that you decided, okay, I'm going to move to the LA area? Because it sounds like a lot of the success you've had was not dependent on you being in LA. A lot of your success has just been, reaching out and building these relationships. And I doubt Jim, when you're writing the Double D Dude Ranch, I doubt he really cares that you're living in LA.
He didn't care. He didn't care. He didn't even know where. He didn't know where I lived. Mm-hmm. He's like, where do you live? We know that Los Angeles is the cinema city, right? There's a magic here. I think I've lived in different cities around the world, Tokyo, Beijing. These are big cities. They're thriving, but they're not cinema cities, And so I think there's always this mystique to the LA area. There's some kind of allure. But I remember I didn't mention this, but I actually had 2 novelizations published for an Adult Swim TV show called Decker. It's this kind of action comedy thing. And I was invited out to DeckerCon, which is this convention to celebrate that TV show. And to be out here in a theater, at the time it was in that Cinefamily Theater in West Hollywood, to kind of step into that atmosphere and to see people coming there, talking movies, feeling that energy, knowing that you're in the kind of city of cinema. There's a real energy there. And it's almost like some people, they soak that in, And I thought I want to soak that in. Mm-hmm. Actually, I thought I wanted to live up in a cabin in the mountains. And that's why I moved up to the mountains of Taos, New Mexico, where the sage fields stretch on for miles. But that's not where my heart wanted to be. And I get kind of esoteric about these things as well. Whereas I decided I was a school teacher up in Taos, New Mexico when I was getting my master's degree. And I thought to myself, I know I don't want to be in the classroom anymore. Actually, I want to be in Los Angeles. And it was almost like just this inner feeling, And then I applied for so many jobs, didn't get them. But I did apply for a certain job and it lined up. And I remember I did reach out to you and I said, where do you recommend for families, man? Because LA can be it's almost like an incomprehensible city until you start to really study it. Mm-hmm. And it helps to have people who live here and live in the general sprawl who can go, well, these neighborhoods are really neat. You might want to think about these neighborhoods. And you were very helpful, Ashley, at that time. And the job that happened to come through for me was literally like 5 miles from, it was literally like right near where you had recommended. And I was like, this is it. This is that magic that I needed. I need to nail this interview. And I did. I nailed the interview and I got the job. But do you need to be in the Los Angeles area? I actually don't know now how to answer that. Does it help? Absolutely. It does help, because what if somebody calls, and people have called and said, can you meet up for coffee? Can you come down to Burbank? Can we meet up in Studio City? Yes, yes, yes. Now, if I would have said no, probably, I don't know. Would I still, we don't know the answers to these questions.
It's subtle and nuanced. It's hard to tell. Yeah.
Absolutely. But being out here absolutely feels, and if it feels right for you and you feel like you want to make the jump and so on and so forth, yada, yada, come check it out. Come see how it feels. And, yes.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Jamie, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me today. This was kind of a great interview, just sprawling, talking about a lot of projects. The one final question I have, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm curious, what was your, because so much of your success has been just reaching out to people, and one of the things I can tell you as someone who you reached out to, you always had a very, just pleasant, normal way about you. It just didn't come across as selfish. And I can't emphasize that enough, is how many people they reach out to, and it's just all about them. Hey, can you read my script? Hey, can you get my script to this producer? Hey, can you help me produce? And it's just that, like, I'm inundated with that stuff. So when I finally find someone that's just asking legitimate questions or smart questions or something, it's just a total thing. But what was your intention reaching out to a guy like me? And I'm really just trying to get sort of your philosophy in general, reaching out to people in general.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that, Ashley. I'd like to think that most of the time, in most all of the cases, my intention is honestly good. And and let me think, in your particular case, so around the time I was looking to learn as much as I could, and you provide such a great service to writers. I mean this. I think I've told you this before, but at the time you were doing the forums, and I learned so much about crafting log lines from you. And I really appreciated that. And I was in that kind of learning mode. And I think when somebody is truly in the learning mode, they become interested in other people. And when you become interested in what other people are doing, there's a beautiful thing can happen there. That opens up room for collaboration. It's not that you're shutting out your work, but it's that you've approached somebody, and hopefully you're approaching them for the right reason, because you really do you love what they create, and you want to learn from them. If that's the case, if there's something there that's really pure, I feel you've done no wrong. You can literally go to sleep that night going, you know what? I've tried. I've put myself out there. My intentions are pure. I'm not trying to cheat anybody out of anything. And sometimes really great things come from that. And actually, every example I've given you today, I believe, came from that space, that mental space, of reaching out to somebody, not with the idea of my scripts are great. So I used to live in Japan for 6 years. And the one thing you learn when you live in Japan is to stop boasting about yourself. That's a very American way of interpreting yourself. It doesn't mean that you denigrate yourself, but it means that you humble yourself before the people around you. And so getting into that mindset has helped me put myself into a more receptive state, if that makes sense, towards other people. And when you're in a receptive space, it opens the space for, like I said, collaboration, creativity, learning. And if I reach out to you, hey, there's something in your work that I really like. Life is short. Do you want to work together? So I think that having that mindset can really help. I do believe in mentors. I believe that having a mentor can really impact somebody's life in a positive way. Just the one example I'll give you is this script, Collide, that we've been talking about. I can tell you with all honesty that working with Johnny Martin has been a grad school level education. And I've been through grad school, okay? Somebody who can read your work and open it up and tear it down, and then open it up and build it up and get you to push yourself beyond your limits, that's worth, I don't know, what is that worth,
Yeah, it's priceless, sure, yeah.
That's priceless. Yeah, you don't want people who are just, that's the thing. The Jim Wynorski experience was fantastic, but to hand over a first draft and to have somebody go, okay, this is great, it doesn't teach you what you really need to be taught, I feel. Because I feel there is room to grow.
Yeah, perfect. So what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up for the show notes.
Absolutely. JamieGrefe.com, JamieGrefe.com. That's the site. I do update it with news or kind of big projects that seem to be coming to life. Otherwise, I check Twitter a lot. So it's just twitter.com/my name, Jamie Grefe, all one word put together. Probably those two spaces. If you're a Facebook person, go ahead and search my name on Facebook. Go ahead and add me there.
So
those are probably the best.
Perfect, perfect. Jamie, again, congratulations on all your successes, and I look forward to having you on again in the future. You can talk about your next couple of films.
Awesome, Ashley.
So,
Thank you so much,
perfect.
man. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Yeah, you too. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.
I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. There have been a number of success stories come out of the service. You can find out about all the SYS Select successes by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Also on SYS podcast episode 222, I talked with Steve Deering, who was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. These services include the newsletter. This monthly newsletter goes out to a list of over 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also provide screenwriting leads. We have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads services, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots, all types of projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. We also have a number of screenwriting classes that are recorded and available in the SYS Select forum. These are all the classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to those whenever you want once you join. The classes cover every part of writing your screenplay, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that is sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Jamie. As I was putting this episode together, I had to write that little spiel at the top of the podcast where I mentioned that I was going to be talking with Jamie, and obviously I'm trying to spin it as best I can to get people to listen to the episode. So the angle I took was basically screenwriter reveals how he sold his screenplays. I know this is something that most screenwriters are going to want to hear, so I thought it was a good angle, and I honestly think it's an accurate description of the episode. So then I'm wondering, as I'm putting this thing together and now, putting these final notes together and thinking about recording this, how people are going to feel after they've listened to this episode. Are my listeners going to feel like it lived up to the hype? Did it? Do you think that it did live up to the hype? That's a question for you, and perhaps only you can answer it for yourself. I know a lot of people, and this is in every field, not just screenwriting, people want a magic bullet, some super simple tip or trick that will radically change the trajectory of their career. And that's sort of the bait and switch. I know that's what people want, and I know that's sort of what I was hinting at with my opening, when in fact, that's the thing. There is no simple tip or trick. I'm sorry that there isn't. And believe me, I wish that there was some simple tip or trick that I could just, give to people and it would totally, transform their career. But the thing is, Jamie laid it out for us, write a ton of screenplays, network like crazy, be easy to work with. So when a producer does hire you, he wants to hire you again in the future. In other words, just do the damn work. It's really not rocket science. It's all right there. Jamie just laid it out. Go do the work, make things happen for yourself, go do a short film, go write a bunch more scripts, enter some screenwriting contests, network, go to some film festivals, go to AFM. These are all the things that you could be doing to move that career ahead a little bit. I'm going to use a few boxing metaphors here. If you wake up one day and decide you want to be a boxing champion, you're not just going to go challenge the champion in your weight class. I mean, maybe you would, but I'd say he's probably not going to respond. You're going to go down to the gym and you're going to start working out and training, and you're probably going to do that for a while, hopefully you didn't do it for a long while. And before you get a professional fight, you're probably going to do some amateur fights too. And if you work hard enough and have at least some talent, hopefully you'll eventually get a pro fight. But that pro fight ain't going to be at the MGM Grand. It's going to be in a dingy gym in the Valley. You'll probably get your ass whipped a few times. There's probably not going to be many people watching it either. But if you win some of those fights, you'll slowly move along to the next level. You know, that's what Double D Dude Ranch is. I mean, it's an early professional fight. He got paid, he learned, he made a connection with a guy who's making a lot of films and is rehiring him for those films. And believe me, you know, most of my writing credits are similar. I'm not poking holes in Double D Dude Ranch, because that's pretty much, you know, what a lot of my credits are. Go look me up on IMDb. My most recent credit is literally a film called Snake Outta Compton. You know, I'll sometimes post something on Facebook or Stage 32 or, you know, Reddit is particularly, you know, nasty. And I often get these snarky responses from people, you know, whatever I say, you know, there'll be a snarky response. Who is this idiot? You know, he wrote Snake Outta Compton, LOL, you know, and, you know, it's a fair point. What have I done? You know, I wrote a script called, or have a couple of credits, you know, Ninja Apocalypse, Snake Outta Compton. These are not, you know, these are not great movie credits. I certainly understand that. Of course, when I ask the person, hey, well, what are your credits? They never have any credits at all. And to me, having a bunch of schlocky writing credits, it isn't a tragedy. If the movie isn't any good, people just forget about it and move on. But the writer made a little bit of money and hopefully learned something too. That's not terrible. Now, you know, is Jamie ever going to win an Academy Award? You know, who knows? You know, the odds are long. You know, am I ever going to win my Oscar? Considering Snake Outta Compton is my most recent credit, I'd say it's not looking real good for me. But continuing with the boxing metaphor, I'm going to leave it out on the mat. I might get a few bloody noses, but I'm never going to feel like I didn't give it my all. And that's really what strikes me. And that doesn't strike me as tragic either. Giving it your all, really trying hard, and not succeeding, you know, that's not tragic. That's, you know, admirable. You know, I think people look up to that and people think, okay, that's what you got to do. But you know what is actually very, very tragic? It's Marlon Brando sitting in the back of that car on the waterfront saying, I could have been a contender. And you know what? Jamie never is going to have to say that to himself. You know why? It's because he is a contender. And I have these filmmakers on the podcast all the time. Last week I had Wendy McComb on. You know, she's a contender too. A few weeks ago I had my friend Nate Ives on with his documentary. He's a contender. And my buddy Bernie Rayo was on a couple weeks ago with his film Killer Sofa. You know, he's a contender too. In fact, I just saw an article in the Hollywood Reporter that said his film was a hidden gem at this year's AFM. So, you know, congratulations to that, Bernie. You know, he's a contender too. And you know what is circling all the way back to the beginning of this little section? You know how you become a contender? You stop looking for tips and tricks and magic bullets and shortcuts, and you just do the damn work. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.